Welcome to this week's episode of Notes from School, the podcast. It is an incredibly exciting assembly today as we have a special guest in the assembly hall. This episode is nearly an hour-long interview and conversation with the legendary songwriter Graham Kendrick. His music has reached people all around the world, and he's probably best known for his song, Shine, Jesus, Shine. That song will forever live in my heart as the number one school assembly banger. We used to love it at school, and in this episode, I ask him lots of questions about that song, and I talk about his influences as a songwriter. We go into how the song Shine, Jesus, Shine actually got into schools around the UK. And he talks about worship music, and we even kind of dive into a little bit about folk music and how the school assembly songs kind of have become this new kind of folk music. And if you listen to the end of the assembly today, there will be a special performance of Shine, Jesus, Shine, featuring both me and Graham singing this song live at the Tunbridge Wells Assembly Hall, which was just an amazing experience. I never thought I'd be up on the stage singing the iconic tune, Shine, Jesus, Shine, with the man that wrote it. So I really hope you enjoy this interview. Please welcome to the Assembly Hall, Mr. Graham Kendrick. What better way to start it off with the ultimate assembly banger legend, Graham Kendrick. Okay, there is a rapturous applause from the assembly hall.
I can hear it.
Yes, you can hear it. And I'm just going to give you a little preamble. I'm sure you've probably heard this many, many times before, but you have been described as a father of modern worship music, the father. And your songs are crammed full of poetic, divine, biblical truth that have sculpted a view of God that has impacted generations. And I can attest to that 100%. And so in short, Graham writes songs that helps the church to sing. Okay, so first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on to this podcast and chatting with me, and also thank you so much for your body of work, all your music that you have made over the years. And so this is a podcast about our school memories primarily, and a lot of people, especially if they grew up from the late 80s through the 90s, would have sung one of your songs in particular. I wonder if you can guess which one it is.
I can't think. Think. It's it could be what I call the Shiny song.
The Shiny song, yes.
Yeah.
So this is a song that I put in a video that I put online, which was my top 10 primary school assembly bangers. And it was, of course, number one. And I'm sure most people would agree with me if they grew up in the 90s. It is our number one school assembly banger. First of all, how do you feel about your song being called an assembly banger?
Oh, absolutely delighted. Actually, it was a big surprise to me that it got picked up in schools by children, because when I wrote it, I thought of it as, and it's a lively song, but I thought it was quite a serious adult hymn, you know. But history has proven me wrong, and I think it's something to do with a lot of school teachers who, picked up the song in various contexts and church and festivals. It was being sung at a lot of Christian festivals. When it was new, it was pretty well launched at one. So yes, music teachers took it into school, and the kids loved it. And I think the possibly popular demand has helped a little bit. So it was a surprise, James. It really was.
It's an interesting thing because a lot of the songs that we learned came from certain books, and I have actually brought a few of them with me. So I was wondering if you recognize any of these books. So I've got a small collection of my school hymn books or song books, and the first one I've got is called Alleluia.
Right. And
for those of you watching on YouTube, it looks like this. And I wonder, I'll just open the contents page for you. We've got a lot of great songs in there. And the one that a lot of people will remember is called Come and Praise.
Okay.
Did you ever come across these books?
I don't recognize any of them, actually.
Oh, really? Interesting. And the final one that I've brought here is called Someone Singing Lord, which has some slightly more, I think this is a slightly younger audience that maybe that would sing from these. So we've got songs about the environment, which are milk bottle tops and paper bags, but we've also got some classics like Kumbaya and Morning Has Broken, and some more traditional hymns. But the thing that I found interesting was that Shine Jesus Shine isn't in these hymn books or these songbooks that a lot of us used at school. So were you ever approached by someone in particular, or is it just something that was passed on by word of mouth that got Shine Jesus Shine into the assembly hall around the country?
Well, I think a lot of it was to do with the teachers, music teachers and teachers responsible for assembly, picked up the song in whatever context. Maybe they heard it in church or at a festival or something, or on a recording, and it was very popular. It very quickly kind of took off in quite an extraordinary way. I wrote it and published it in 1987, so it's quite a long time ago. So it must have been word of mouth, because there was no promotional, targeting the schools. Now let's get into the schools. That's the only reason I could think of.
Well, I think it's just also testament to the power of the song. That it wasn't in a set book that were. I mean, Come and Praise it was made by the BBC for schools, and so it had a set list of songs. And the funny thing is, when I do my show, I say in my head, Shine Jesus Shine was number one, but a lot of people disagree with me because, and the ones that disagree with me they were slightly older and didn't go to school after it was written. So I think in my head it was a kind of a timeless song that has been around for generations. But it's a relatively new song compared to a lot of these. But I grew up singing a lot of your other tunes in church alongside school. So I sang songs like Meekness and Majesty, and Like a Candle Flame, and Servant King, and things like that. I sang those growing up. So your music's kind of been part of the fabric of my childhood. So that's another reason it's so great to meet you. But when you were writing, just to go back to Shine Jesus Shine, when you were writing that song, did you have any inclination after you'd written it that it would be this kind of universally iconic tune that was sung all around the world?
At the time, not at all. I was writing a lot of songs at the time. I think I was on target to do another album of church songs. And it was one of many songs. There were other songs that I preferred myself, I think possibly from a sort of musical artistic point of view. And us musicians are a little bit like that. Sometimes we think, oh, that's a really clever tune. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's the one that everyone else is going to like. So, in fact, it had a sort of a stumbling start. I initially wrote just the 3 verses. Okay. And my thought was that this is in a hymn style, and it's just like hymns don't have choruses. Okay, so it was going to be a 3 or 4 verse hymn. And at the time, I belonged to a very lively church in London, who very kindly let me even try out songs. So we'd have these gatherings, and we loved singing, so people would gather. And before the meeting started, I would sometimes look at my watch and say, I've got 5 minutes, I'll try out a new song. Because there's no better way. I think of it as road testing. If you're going to buy a new car, you want to drive it. And I tried out my 3 verses, which are more or less the same as they are at the moment, and shall we call it the response underwhelming? It was. Okay. It wasn't. It was fine. It was polite, but it wasn't like wow, And so I kind of thought, oh dear, another failure. Well, to a degree, but I mean, I never give up on these ideas, so I put it away in the file, and for some reason came back to it probably a few months later, and a few people had said, Graham, I think that needs a chorus. You should write banger of a chorus
Yeah, there we go.
to it.
And you did it.
And you think, oh, yeah, that's easy. You give me, I've got 5 minutes now. But it doesn't work like that.
So did you have the Shine On Me section when you just had the verses? So when it goes to the... Because it's an A major, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And when it goes to G major.
Shine on me. I think it did have that, actually, but it didn't go anywhere.
Right, yeah. So you shine on me, and then back to verse 2 kind of thing. Okay, yeah. That's interesting.
So I remember one afternoon, I had some time to write. I think I had a project, where's your songs, Graham? Come on, And so I'm leafing through my file. I think, okay, I'll just have another go at this one. And it was just one of those moments when, sometimes I just sing what I've got and then almost launch out into the unknown. I'm there in my room, in my little creative zone. And, what's the chorus for this? And I think it started with the phrase. It's not always easy to remember the particular details of these creative, because you're in dozens of thoughts going through your head. But I think that phrase, "Shine, Jesus, shine," which at the time was really fresh and unusual in the kind of world of church songs that I was part of. But that, I think, was what then led to the tune. Which came together in fairly short time. Again, when you're being creative, you lose a sense of passage of time. It might only have been half an hour or something. Or
you're just in that flow state.
So then
it kind of came,
and most of the chorus kind of came together in that short time. And I thought, oh, that's a nice surprise. But still, no sense of where it will go. And initially, when I put it all together, verse and chorus, the tempo seemed to pull against each other. What speed does this go? But eventually it settled, and I got one or two friends of mine with keyboard and so on to sort of, give me a perspective on how it could sit all together. But I think it was when I tried it out first at our home church. The next road testing opportunity, it started to take off. And then I submitted it for an Easter event called Spring Harvest, which it started in 1979, but in 1990, I think it sort of peaked at about 80,000 people will come to this thing every Easter.
Were those held in? Are they still being held? The Spring Harvest?
Yeah, they are still going on. Yeah.
That's not in Butlins, is it? In like the Butlins resorts?
Yes, it has often been at Butlins. Right.
That's really funny in a way, because I've just started doing some events at Butlins. Which are the big weekenders. So I was up in Skegness and in Bognor Regis. I'm going to Minehead soon, and I'm doing a version of my show. But it's funny actually that it would have possibly be in the same room.
It could have been. It could have been,
but in a different context.
I should probably track down where I was, because they had several sites running simultaneously. It had grown so big. So yes, you might be able to say, and this is the place where this song
where it all started,
launched. But and that was, you'd have a big top or a big auditorium with several thousand people. Yeah. And that was where I could hear it. You hear the sound of the crowd have picked up this song. You hear it in the voices, you feel it in the atmosphere, and it kind of shivers down the backbone. You think, okay, what have we got here?
Was that quite a new concept, the Spring Harvest, in terms of getting so many people into a room that wasn't a traditional kind of religious-based venue like a church?
It was a bit. It was a bit new. I mean, I think there is quite a history of these sort of summer camps or. In the churches over many years. There's something called the Keswick Conference, which happened, surprise, surprise, in Keswick, which ran for years. But I think it was a new generation, people like me who sort of grew up in the 60s and 70s and whatever, and began to find our voice. So actually it was a couple of guys I'd worked with quite closely in different contexts who founded it. They got together and they thought there's a real need to mobilize Christians to really be Christians, you know, and to have worship and praise and exciting music, but also seminars and workshops. And it was that kind of thing. So the first one happened in 1979 where was it? It was Prestatyn, I think it was, on the North Coast.
Okay.
Yeah. 3,000, mostly young people, came together for this thing. And it really sort of took off from there and grew rapidly. And I was at that time just starting to write songs because I was a singer-songwriter. I was a performer, you know. But I was on the side, if you like, starting to write songs that could be sung in church, really expressing what was happening in my own life and then other people, in my contemporaries' lives as well. So I've sang my first couple of church songs in that context. And there was such a hunger for them. It kind of drew me out. I thought, I've really got to think seriously about writing songs for everyone to sing as opposed for me to perform to people. So it was the people that drew it out, really. And
that would be, I suppose, a different approach to songwriting in a way, because before you'd be thinking, how would this suit my voice? And how would it suit your physical voice, but also your kind of metaphorical voice as being a songwriter? But I guess then, if you're thinking about a room full of people, you're thinking, okay, what key am I going to write this in order so that other people can actually sing it, so it's not too high for people, not too low. So was there a kind of a transition period between you being a singer-songwriter that, in terms of your songwriting process, how long was that kind of transition then going into becoming a songwriter that would write for many, many people, not just for yourself?
I seem to recall there was an overlap of maybe about 4 years or something. Because I was busy, I was touring and so on. But this other thing started to rise up alongside it. And eventually there was just no time to be the artist anymore. And there was also a big demand for this kind of, because it was new. It's hard for those that are aware of the volume of new songs that appear in, that happen in this world of Christian worship. It's just massive numbers. But back then, it was very new. It was actually quite new to have a sound of rhythm section, keyboards, bass, and drums. The kind of rock band, if you like, pop band sort of lineup. That was all very new. And the new generation loved it. So people like me were getting invitations. There's only a relatively small number of us doing this. And so we got so many invitations to go and do it around the place. Yeah. So I track it back to about the mid-'80s when there was no time for anything else.
Yeah. Did you get much pushback against that new way of connecting with people with a band and things like that? Because obviously hymn singing generally has been, in a church with an organ and a choir, quite traditional. And I suppose probably after, I guess, the 60s, maybe from the 60s, it probably transitioned and changed a bit. So did you get much of a pushback against the way you were doing things?
Yeah, there was. I think because rock music, or the rock music instruments, and electric guitars and drums in particular, were associated with the sort of hedonism and the rock world of rock and roll and drugs,
especially in the 70s.
And it was very hedonistic. So I think a lot of people struggled to separate out, the instruments used in that kind of music. To how can you use it to the glory of God? But that's always been the case. I was surprised to discover from a scholar writing about the early church that in the early church, and we're going back 2,000 years, The flute was a very controversial instrument. The flute.
Yeah. Very controversial. Yeah.
Simply because it was heavily associated with the pagan orgies and so on that were very popular in the Roman Empire. Yeah. But I understand that. It's associations, isn't it, that carry a lot of weight, cultural associations. But I think after a while people began to, just by experience, say, no, actually you really can you can worship God or glorify God with an electric guitar. If it's
I think we need to bring back the hedonism of the flute. Let's just have a rock gig with the flute solos. But that is really funny. I listened to your new album, the Salvation Songs, and that seems like a bit of a return to a bit of a singer-songwriter way of writing. Are they a mixture of new songs and old songs, or is it all new stuff?
It's new, yes. Yeah. Most written within the last 4 or 5 years. A couple of exceptions. I did one homage to one of my very earliest singer-songwriter songs, which I wrote when I was a student at Teacher Training College. But most of them are very new, and it started about 4 years ago when a guy in my children's generation, who's a very talented singer-songwriter, producer, I was spending some time with him and I sang him this song that was one of my very earliest sort of narrative story, folky songs, just me picking up my acoustic guitar and singing about, a guy called Simon Peter. And he said, Graham, I never knew you wrote songs like that. And I said, that's where it all started. Yeah. And he kind of gave it some thought, and then he sort of threw down a challenge and said, Graham, I really think you should write some more of those kind of songs. And I said, well, there's not much call for it, really, And so, look, if you do, I will produce an EP for you at my own expense.
There we go. That helps.
That was, it was part, well, obviously that was a great offer because I thought he's a really good producer, but I think it was also a kind of the affirmation, it comes back that way. It comes from your children's generation. Yeah. Somebody saying, you're good at that. Why don't you do some more? And having done that first EP, and those songs are on this new Salvation Songs album, I carried on. I wrote some more.
Yeah, great.
And I loved it. There was a kind of freedom writing just, as my own creativity and storytelling, unfolded. Because writing for church is actually a very tight box. You're climbing inside a box, and as you said earlier, quite rightly, you've in a range that people can sing, and it's a very different. It took me a while to adapt, but it's a different thing, and it's also that's the restrictiveness actually brings out a lot of creativity, but at the same time, I felt this great freedom in just writing whatever I wanted to write.
I suppose when you're thinking about writing for a group of people, another thing to consider is the balance between the content of the song, whether it's the theology or whatever story you're telling, with the accessibility of it. So something like Shine, Jesus, Shine, just as an example, is one that just obviously works really well because you're getting a lot across in the message, but it's something that's so accessible that so many people can sing. With your new album, I really love the front cover, the picture.
Yes.
And that's a picture of your dad, right?
It is, yes. It was. I found it in among some of his stuff. He passed away a number of years ago, and I was sorting through some of his papers and whatever. And this photo, a really professionally taken photo, and I recognized the people, and it's from when I was about 7 years old, and he was a pastor of a church in Essex, and near Basildon, Laindon, Essex, and it was a piano with my dad, who was a good pianist and had a good strong voice, and everybody gathered around, sort of leaning on the piano.
Amazing. Yeah.
It was a moment, and that was quite a common moment in my childhood.
Yeah.
because my father was quite musical and was a pastor of a church. People love singing. I can remember it from when I was even younger than that, when that photo was taken.
Did he play all sorts of stuff, or was it mostly hymns? Or
It was most. I mean, he loved all kinds of music, mostly classical music, but I guess mostly it was accompanying people singing.
Yeah.
So there's a heritage there for me in the next generation. But in that photo, there's little about 7-year-old me.
Oh yeah,
sitting there with my mouth.
You don't remember what he was playing?
No, I don't. No, I don't.
But the joy on the people's faces is so powerful. You can see it. You think it's just. I absolutely love that, and I'm sure you see it on a regular basis, and I have done as well after kind of setting up this show. It's seeing the joy, that communal joy of people in a room or in a space singing together, and I think there's not much like it. And I think obviously in this day and age we are a lot more disconnected in society to each other than we were before. And getting into a room and singing together is just so important, whatever the content of the song. And it was quite moving, actually, seeing that video and listening to the first song on the album, which was the story of your dad wheeling out the piano and singing. Is it's quite a moving kind of snapshot in time. And it's do you find that you personally get joy out of seeing other people connected through song?
Absolutely, and I think the connection is, in my context, is two directions. I think people are connecting together communally, because when everyone's singing together, you're all making a big sound, and if people are singing well, you cease being embarrassed about your own voice, because it's just become part of the big sound. So there's something very human, actually, about singing together. In fact, I read a little study somewhere that when people sing together to a rhythm, that hearts start beating.
Yeah, and you breathe together. You start to breathe together, and because you're singing the same tune, your hearts are beating at the same time, and you're in sync physically with other people. It's a really fascinating kind of not just psychological look at singing, group singing, but also thinking about the physicality of how connected you all are to other people are. And I don't think there are many other ways in life that you can actually achieve that. Really.
I think it's. And I think it's a powerful thing, and it's a very healing thing. For sure. But also in the context of people worshiping God, there is a vertical dimension as well. The horizontal is just being human beings together, and recognizing we're not just isolated individuals, but also the spiritual side as well comes alive, and that is so powerful. And I've had the privilege of leading worship in so many settings, and there often is that moment where you think, "Wow, there's something happening." You feel the presence of God, and you see the joy. And even though I might have been the worship leader, along with a band and whatever, everyone's forgotten who's around them. In a sense.
Yeah, exactly. And you're taking that of yourself.
I'm watching and I'm thinking, wow, this is we're kind of, this is what we're meant to be. We're not just material. We're spiritual as well, and this connection, horizontal and vertical, is such a powerful thing, and it does change. People are transformed in that kind of setting, and sometimes there's a healing that goes on in people, just of being in that context.
I've even though the show that I do it's called Primary School Assembly Bangers Live, and it's obviously a lot of the songs that I sing have a religious base. Not necessarily everyone in the audience is religious, but my approach to doing my show is that I think if you do have faith and if you are religious, it's fantastic because you're in a room full of people singing these songs, and if you don't, then it's also great because you're kind of connecting to them on a different level. And I've had people saying that how kind of emotional they felt after, even though my show is quite sort of light-hearted in a way, how emotional they felt afterwards because they've been in a room full of people singing or a space. And there was an amazing moment last summer where I managed to play Glastonbury Festival, which was quite unexpected. And the last song I sang was "Shine, Jesus, Shine." And so I had probably about 1,000 people all singing this tune, and a lot of whom probably or possibly haven't sung it in a church context, but remember it from school. And just seeing the joy on people's faces singing that song was fantastic, and whatever they got out of it was is great. But it is interesting seeing how well it connects to people. I just want to go back a little bit to talk about the singer-songwriter side of your work. When you started out, were you influenced by many contemporary writers at the time? Because the funny thing is, out of one of the books I showed you, the Alleluia Songbook, as well as the hymns, you've also got tunes by Bob Dylan and Joni Mitchell and Simon & Garfunkel and people, and the Byrds. Did you have many other influences?
Oh, all of those. Yeah. It was a great season actually for creativity in that sort of contemporary folk, or whatever you want to call it, singer-songwriter vein. And Paul Simon of Simon & Garfunkel, amazing writer.
Yeah.
And actually the Beatles, they had phases where they wrote a whole lot of that vein as well.
Yeah.
You got Paul McCartney's Blackbird, and all this was new at the time. So it was. And because my heart was always the songs, people, when I was like sort of 19 years old at college, people weren't saying, "Oh, Graham, just got an amazing voice," They were saying, "I love that song."
Right.
And it was clear that my particular gift was in the songs and in the stories. Of course, I was brought up on stories. My father, being a pastor of a church, you're always hearing Bible stories, so I've been well storied. So it's very natural to write songs like that, and listening just to the music of that particular era, which people still people still go back to. Because so many things were started at that point. And I think there was also a lot of social comment at that time. Obviously Dylan and the civil rights movement in America brought up a lot of sort of political / protest songs. So it was also message music. So it was very natural to get up and sing your message. So I did that too.
There's a little melody, quite a niche melody, and I think it's The Boxer by Simon & Garfunkel. I think in the middle section it goes da 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 da, and when I hear that, I actually think of Like a Candle Flame. That melody. I don't know why. It's just I don't know whether there was any link there, but another link that some people have said I've described. Shine, Jesus, Shine. It's almost like the Sweet Caroline of the Assembly Hall, just because of the I don't know what it is about it, but there's a similar kind of uplifting melody in the chorus. I don't know whether that was there wasn't any kind of conscious link to any of those old kind of 60s tunes at all.
Not consciously, but
No.
I think for every generation that's soaked in a particular music of that season, it becomes the reference points. And if I make up tunes, I don't doubt that it owes something to
As
to that
songwriter,
era.
it's all coming from various directions and coalescing in your mind somewhere. It's
Yes.
amazing. I think what I find quite interesting actually is talking of like the folk tradition. Is that obviously there was that kind of newer protest song movement in the 60s, but that kind of came from a longer folk tradition, kind of coming out of maybe the American gospel tradition or the British singer-song kind of tradition of songs from local communities that Simon and Garfunkel picked up with Scarborough Fair and all those sorts of songs. And in a way, I don't know whether you feel this, but I kind of feel like some of these the songs that we sang in assembly, whether they're written by yourself or written by some of the songwriters that wrote songs in Common Praise, I almost feel like it's a new folk tradition because it's music that's been passed from person to person, and which is almost how these songs came into the schools, because they were passed from person to person, and it's not necessarily songs that are passed down through reading the music and having pianists write kind of play from a sheet music. Do you kind of have a sense of a new folk tradition with these school assembly songs at all?
Well, it's a very interesting thought. I hadn't really thought of it that way, but I guess for a folk tradition to exist, it's got to be embedded in somewhere, hasn't it? And I think school assemblies in schools that sing, and not every school does, of course, is the kind of place, I guess, where that sense of singing with other people, not just on headphones by yourself or whatever. Perhaps it is the communal that makes it folk.
Yeah.
Because so much of our listening now is as individuals, watching screens or on headphones, and it is a different. Then if you go to a concert, that's a whole different experience,
Yeah.
So I think that's what. But it must be a mixture of the big sort of anthems of the songs that are so popular that everybody hears them or recognize them. If you
just before we started recording, you were talking about working with songwriters in other countries like Poland, for example, and getting those songwriters to connect with maybe the folk music of their country, and writing new music that isn't just kind of a copy of what you might hear from American songwriters. Do you find that's quite an important thing to encourage new songwriters?
I think it is. It's globalization, isn't it? That which is most popular, driven to the top by the algorithms and on the internet and so on. That becomes it's not forced. It's there because it's popular, but I think it dominates after a while, and because it's perceived to be cool, and everybody wants to be cool, particularly younger people. The tendency is to, if you're not part of that dominant culture, you despise your little culture.
Sure.
Particularly if you come from a smaller country. And I've noticed this as I travel around. I mean, for many, many years, I've, when I've met with, and I've often traveled and been asked to talk about songwriting or worship in church or all these kind of things. And I've always felt it's important to encourage people to write, I think you can call it heart songs, their own heart songs. What is the music that is closest to our hearts? And a lot of that will be the music that is soaked into the culture. I think it's very complex these days because, we listen to so much from so many places.
Yeah.
But I do think it's time to get back to asking the question, what is our heart music? And even more important, for those who use music to glorify God and sing communally in church, I think there is something important about expressing the uniqueness of each community or each nation, because it's all a little bit different. Every community, every nation, every people group, every language group have got something unique, and I think that it's part of. I see it as part of worshiping God, to gather that uniqueness, to make sure it comes out. I mean, Bible says many times, especially in the Psalms, sing a new song.
There we go. Yeah.
And it does imply, sing a new song to the Lord. It does imply that songs are overflowing from your life and your lessons you're learning and the community that you're a part of. And that, new life equals new songs. But to just borrow songs from somebody else's world and experience, it can be great. And there's some wonderful songs, but I think there's just a danger that we lose something of that unique and specialness of who we are and what our heart music is wherever we are.
Have you worked much in the States with big kind of churches out there?
Not a great deal. I think, there was a season when, songs like Shine Jesus Shine and Amazing Love and a few others were quite popular in the States. And I sometimes find myself in large situations. But, it's interesting how different seasons music moves in different, like tides, moves in different directions. There was a season in the 90s when the next generation down to me were writing songs which got picked up in a really big way in America.
Yeah.
But the present season, it's like American songs are coming back this way,
Yeah.
But the internet is complicating everything.
Yeah. Well, everything's kind of one culture in a way.
That's the danger.
And it is interesting with my wife's American and talking to her about our childhood experiences are quite different because I feel like so many people in the UK grew up singing songs that are quite overtly religious. Shine Jesus Shine it's not it's it's
Really?
quite a Jesus-y
I didn't know
song.
it was religious.
Yeah. So it's the fact that we all sang these songs, it's quite interesting to see the difference, and she finds it quite funny seeing the reaction when people all get together and reflect on their childhoods, and it's all very kind of religious songs. There's been a change over the years in school singing. First of all, there's not as much singing in schools generally, due to various reasons, whether there aren't as many piano playing teachers, there's not as much time, and there aren't as many resources for children to sing. Do you there's a new company called Out of the Ark, or not that new anymore, but they write new school assembly songs. Are you aware of them at all?
Very much so, yes. Yeah. And the couple that founded it, I've known them for a number of years, and I'm a great admirer of their work and the way they've provided so many good, just really good songs for schools. So in fact, we have a little collaboration brewing with.
Oh, there we go.
Yes,
hot off the press.
Well, it'll come. It'll come eventually. That's but collecting together some songs for a kind of Graham Kendrick school songbook.
Fantastic.
And actually, one of the things I've enjoyed most was a while back they came back to me and said, "Look, we could do with one more song," and I said, "Well, are you short of any particular kind of songs?"
Yeah.
And one of the things they were short of, they said, was songs about harvest.
Okay.
Harvest season.
Yeah.
I ended up writing a harvest song. I had so much fun writing this harvest song, and we started to track it and so on. But it won't be out for a while yet. But I really, really enjoyed.
Will it be out in time for this harvest? Possibly.
I'm not sure. We might be able to sneak one out. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll have to think about that.
Are there when you wrote a harvest song, how did you approach that? Did you think about as kind of writing for a contemporary school audience? Did you think about coming into it as a specific theme? Because they've got a number of harvest songs, I think, that they've written. So they've got one which is called The Harvest Song. And they've got more songs about vegetables as well. So the Harvest Samba and things like that.
I did my research.
Yeah. So was there a particular approach that you came into that song for?
Well, and that is the big challenge: is how the angle finding an angle that's fresh and different. And often my approach is I just find an idea I like. It could be a tune, or it could be a few lines, or a concept, and I start experimenting. And I basically started off just trying to describe the sights and sounds of harvest, because that's what it is, isn't it? So it was, the golden fields of grain, ripened in the sun, and so it's this descriptive thing, and then a chorus where you can join in with some actions.
Did you come up with some actions?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Knowing that there is a cool cutoff point with in the schools, there's a certain point where kids say, "I'm not going to do those silly actions anymore."
I think you're probably safe up to the age of about 12 or 13, and then when you get to secondary school, then it's a bit more.
Secondary school. Yeah.
Talking of actions, were you aware of, or did you write the claps in "Shine, Jesus, Shine"? Because that's something that is universally known, but it's not in the sheet music, is it?
No. That is just what do they call it? Oral tradition. It's somebody did it once, and then somebody copied it, and then everybody did it, except the number of claps varies from place to place.
Oh, really?
It does, yeah.
So the one that I know, so "Shine on me, clap, 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 clap."
Yeah,
is that the one?
That's the most common one.
Yeah, okay.
That I think it's sort of settled down to that. But I think I did once count up to 8 claps. Someone was doing double time.
Oh wow! Okay.
Or someone was
getting very excited.
It simply was a crowd thing. It rose from the people.
Yeah, there we go. That's again maybe going back to part of the folk tradition. People coming up with their own actions. That I love also the idea of pre-internet things spreading across the country. It's maybe like kind of whispers from school to school, saying you got to do the claps in "Shine, Jesus, Shine." That's brilliant. Well, you've been extremely generous with your time. I don't want to take up your whole day, but I just thought that we just kind of wrap it up. Thank you again for also talking about the song that I'm sure a lot of people know you from, and so many people know many of your other songs. Are there any other tunes that you would recommend people go and listen to if someone's listening to this and they only know you from, let's say, Servant King or "Shine, Jesus, Shine" or "Meekness and Majesty"? Are there any other tunes or albums that you think, I would recommend maybe going to listen to that for further listening? Apart from the new album, of course.
Oh, the new album, of course. Well, I would say visit my website, and the most popular songs tend to sort of get featured and rise to the so there'll be several there, all different kinds. There's an A to Z search. Nice.
Okay, just get through, work your way through it,
and a few videos as well. It's all there for the pickings.
I've actually got another question that I just remembered, which is
go ahead.
Possibly slightly deeper, actually, but I'd be interested to know what your thoughts are on this. So a lot of people that come to my show or listen to your music may love the music, but find it difficult to actually get into a church setting, or in terms of, I think some people may have now fallen out of love with the church, or they might have had some difficulties with some of the teachings in the specific church they're in. How do you think? Would you have any advice for people to balance their love for the music that they probably still like listening to with the maybe not so positive feelings towards actually going into a church setting? I don't know if you have any advice for that.
Yeah, well, I mean, today so many churches put their services online.
Yeah.
So you can check a church out without having to be there.
Yeah.
And get the feel of it. And our own church, my own church, I'm a part of here in Kent. A lot of people have come that way. Say, "Oh, I saw you online and watched a few weeks running, and I thought, oh, I'll just pop my head in there and see what it's, I think it's okay.
Yeah.
So that's a great way in. But I would also say just be careful about, the stuff that is often said, the impressions, the caricatures, because whilst there's always some truth in that, so many churches are just really warm, friendly, safe places. So, there does come a time when you need to actually walk through the door. Hopefully there's a place at the back where you can sort of hide for a while. I like doing that sort of thing, I like to sort of, observe for a while. Or get to know one or two people, because in any good church, there's networks of friendships, and hopefully folks are very open. You can get to know the actual people as people. I think there are many ways in, and there is so much great music online that you can listen to of all kinds, that you can soak in, and say, okay, well, is this true? And what does it mean to me? What do I really believe? I think there are many ways in. Was it seek and you will find? Knock and the door will be open. Oh, that was Jesus, wasn't it? Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you. If seekers, if they keep on seeking, they always find.
Fantastic. Final question I have for you. Do you have any memories of singing at school? And if so, were there any songs that you loved singing at school? As this is a Notes from School podcast, were there any tunes that you sang at school growing up that you remember singing?
There were. School assembly, a lot of it was actually hymn singing.
Yeah, traditional hymns.
Yeah, traditional hymns. And I think probably us boys at least used to love that, he who would valiant be against all disaster, because it's got that verse about hobgoblins and foul fiends.
Amazing.
And this is
the best hymn ever written about hobgoblins.
So I used to enjoy that, but I don't remember many of this kind of songs. You were saying it's like almost a new folk tradition. It was quite formal. It was, I think, a school assembly was a kind of a diluted form of a church service. A lot
of people loved When a Knight Won His Spurs. I don't know if you sang that one.
No, we didn't. No,
because that had lyrics about slaying dragons and things like that.
Oh right, yes.
So
fight the good fight with all your might. That was another one the boys.
Well, fight the good fight when they're sat on the back benches, probably hitting each other, or whatever.
Do a demonstration.
Oh, well, there's so many great tunes, and thank you so much for your time and being so generous with your time. It's absolutely fantastic to meet you, and thank you for your contribution to singing. I mean, there are probably millions of people around the world that have been touched by your music, so I'm sure each one of them says a great big thank you to you. So there we go, Graham Kendrick in the Assembly Hall for Notes from School podcast. It's been an absolute joy. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Cheers. This is an incredible moment because the songwriter of Shine, Jesus, Shine, Graham Kendrick, is with us here today and he's going to join me on stage to sing it. Huge round of applause for Graham Kendrick. This man has brought joy to so many people around the world. And if you know this song, I want you to sing it as loud as you can for Graham and me. And we're going to sing it together.
Yes, we are.
Yes, we are. Okay, so here we go. Hopefully I can do it justice on the piano. Because this is the introduction. So I'd love to hear you sing nice and loud. It goes like this. Lord, the light of your love is shining in the midst of the darkness shining. Jesus, light of the world, shine on us. Set us free by the truth you now bring us. Shine. Who knows the claps? Woo! Shine on me. Here's a chorus.
Shine, Jesus, shine. Fill this land with the Father's glory. Blaze, Spirit, blaze. Set our hearts on fire. Flow, river, flow. Flood the nations with grace and mercy. Send forth your word, Lord, and let there be light.
Okay, we're going to do one more verse for Graham. Here we go. Lord, I come to your awesome presence, from the shadows into your radiance.
By the blood I may enter your brightness. Search me, try me, consume all my darkness. Shine on.
Let's get the claps.
Shine on me.
One more time for Graham.
Shine, Jesus, shine. Fill this land with the Father's glory. Blaze, Spirit, blaze. Set our hearts on fire. Flow, river, flow. Flood the nations with grace and mercy. Send forth your word, Lord, and let there be light.
Ladies and gents of Tunbridge Wells, make some noise for Mr. Graham Kendrick right now.